Hey guys, so I just wanted to wade a little bit into the transgender rights debate that's happening right now. So Carolina passed a law stating that a person can only go into the restroom of the gender that they were assigned to at birth. And this effectively excludes transgender people from going into the restroom that they identify with. Um, Now, I'm not a transgender person, and I know very few transgender people. So if I'm making a mistake, if I'm stating things correctly, please feel free to correct me in the comment section. However, I do want to come at this from a medical and scientific perspective, and I have some personal stake in this too. I'm going to be a doctor very soon, and that means that I need to stand up for the rights of my patients. As a student, I've already had two transgender patients that came into my psych um, department after having suicidal ideations. And they had problems with their family, they had problems with their peers, and they weren't sure of themselves, right? And frankly, if I was in a society where people rejected me for who I was, if I was in society where my parents rejected me for who I was, where my family rejected me, I'd feel pretty bad too. I'd feel suicidal too. So I'm not holding anything against them, but I do need to stand up for them. I also have a story from my sister who had a patient, uh, transgender female, came in after a suicidal attempt and after a medication overdose. And she didn't exactly know what she was doing with the medication. And they were able to clear the medication from her system. Unfortunately, society still rejected her after that. Her family still rejected her after that. So they sent her home, but she had a second attempt. She did her homework a little bit better this time, and she succeeded in her attempt. So to me, it's a little bit personal. And it, first of all, addresses the question of whether transgender people choose to be a certain way, choose the opposite gender just because, or gay people even choose to be a certain way, it doesn't make sense to me that people would choose to be ostracized from society and choose to be rejected from society, choose to be rejected by their family and their peers, and choose to be in a place where they're constantly depressed and uh, have attempt to commit suicide. So suicidal rates in transgender people are much higher than in the rest of the population. In the rest of the population, suicidal attempts are 1.6% of the population. And for transgender people, it's 41% attempt suicide. There's something wrong with that, right? There's something wrong with that number. There's something wrong with the society in which that number happens, where an entire group of people are committing suicide at a much higher rate. There's something wrong with that society, and that's what we need to fix. And I hope my video can, elucidate a few things, clarify a few things, and we can move in the right direction. And hopefully we can continue to have this conversation as we move forward. Um, a lot of this may not be about laws, right? It has nothing to, it has very little to do with, I think, the North Carolina law itself. It's that law is a representation of an inherent, innate societal bias against transgender people. And that's why they're committing suicide at such high rates, So we need to address that bias against transgender people. And this law is a manifestation of that. It's giving us a platform to do it moving forward. Okay, so I'm going to address some misstatements by this guy named Joey Salads, this YouTube video by this guy named Joey Salads. Now, he seems to be a guy who does prank videos. So I'm not holding anything against him. I don't think he's lying when he's stating some of the wrong things that he states. But he is stating incorrect facts, right? He's stating incorrect things. And it's really important that we realize our own faults, right? This guy's ignorant on the subject of medicine. He's ignorant on the subject of psychiatry. He's ignorant on the subject of transgender rights. And yet he feels the need to make a video where he has millions of viewers. He has 3 million, about 3 million views on this video alone. And he feels the need to state his opinion as a fact. And that's not okay. It's not wrong to be ignorant of things, right? I'm ignorant of how to cook. I suck at cooking, right? I always order out, right? I order out a lot, or someone else has to cook for me. I suck at fixing my car. Mechanical failures in my car I cannot fix. I will always call AAA, right? Um, but that doesn't mean I'm going to make a video on a high-profile channel talking about how to fix a car or talking about how to cook as if I know how. Okay, there's something wrong with that. That's not okay. I'm not criticizing his intentions, but he needs to up his game. He needs to realize his own faults and be humble about it, and not make these kind of videos again. Okay, I'm just gonna go through his videos and correct a few things as they come up.
What's up, guys? Joey Salas here. In North Carolina passed a bill that requires trans people to use the bathrooms that correspond with the sex listed on their birth certificate. I reached out to a trans friend of mine and a doctor who I'm also friends with, and both had some contradicting points.
Okay, so both of them had contradictory points. Now, talking to one transgender friend and talking to one doctor means nothing, right? That's sort of, he's just sort of generalizing here without realizing it, probably. But he also makes it seem as if they have contradicting points. This leads to the false impression that doctors and transgender people are on opposite sides of the debate. I will show you shortly that that's not true. The medical community, doctors of America, support transgender rights.
My trans friend told me that nobody is born to a sex or a gender, and that gender and sex are a social construct.
Okay, so his transgender friend tells him nobody's born to sex and gender are social constructs. Now, I don't know if his transgender friend is saying this or if that's his interpretation of what his transgender friend said, and he's just totally not understanding what he's saying. But regardless, that's not true. Okay, so sex and gender are two different things. Sex are the actual physical organs that you're born with, right? So there's nothing you can do to change that, right? Being born with physical breasts, that's just how you're born. Having born with like either male or female genitalia, this is how you're born, right? But certain aspects of gender are clearly social constructs. And what do I mean by that? Well, think about what it means to grow up to be a male in this particular society. Generally, males have shorter hair. They wear jeans. They generally don't wear the color pink. While women wear skirts, they tend to have longer hair. Makeup is more acceptable for them. Now, we're not born, wearing jeans, right? It's obviously a social construct, right? And these social constructs change over time. Like back in the 1970s, having long hair was okay in men, right? Because they were all a bunch of hippies. These social constructs change from society to society, right? Being a woman in India, you wear saris. It's a little bit different. You wear the dot in the middle of the forehead. It's a little bit different being a woman in India as a social construct, as a gender, right? Than it is in the United States, right? So obviously these things are social constructs. Now, the need to have that construct might be innate, right? So the need to separate men and women into gender constructs on top of the physical differences that they have may be innate. Maybe all societies have some societal differences between men and women. I'm not arguing that point. But obviously certain aspects of gender are social constructs. Obviously, sex is a social construct, is not a social construct. I think this is irrelevant to the conversation, by the way. It shouldn't matter whether gender and sex are a social construct or whether they're not. In fact, it strengthens the case for transgender rights if they're innately the gender that they identify with, right? So in my opinion, it doesn't matter. But continuing.
And that DNA and genetics have nothing to do with your sex. My doctors said that DNA and genetics have everything to do with your gender at birth.
Okay, so his doctor says that DNA and genetics have everything to do with your gender at birth. I just find this a little bit funny because he obviously doesn't understand genetics, right? He's obviously never studied the subject of medicine because he's stating like a redundant point, like DNA and genetics aren't the same exact thing. You can just state one of those and your sentence would make just as much sense. So it's kind of funny that way. And his doctor said they have everything to do with your gender at birth. So I don't know if his doctor actually said that. His doctor did say that he didn't go through med school because I'll state in a few that it's much more complicated than that, right?
You either become a male or a female.
So he thinks, his doctor says that at birth you're either a male or a female, right? And that's not true, right? And first of all, I stated that gender and sex are two different things, even though he just stated that as a gender right there. But even if he meant sex, right? You're not just male or female. There's some people who are what we call pseudo-hermaphroditic, right? They have both male and female body parts, right? If his doctor told him that you're either male or female at birth, he didn't go through med school, okay? Because we learned this. This is like our ABCs, okay? So this guy's misstating facts. He makes it seem like doctors are on his side or on the side of conservatives, and they're not. Okay, he's clearly misstating facts here.
With help of my trans friend, today I'm going to dress and act like a transgender.
Like a transgender person, dude. They're people.
I'm then going to enter women's bathrooms, and let's see how they react.
Okay, I'm not going to go through the rest of this video. I just wanted to state his misstatements at the outset, which are like 3 or 4 per sentence, and address that. He goes to the bathroom pretending to be transgender, okay? He could have at least made the experiment a little bit better by having an actual transgender person go into the bathroom. Because transgender people have been using bathrooms for decades now, and we hadn't had any issues until now, right? So his experiment aside, he's misstating things, okay? So as I said before, sex is not necessarily deterministic, like a dualistic, right? It's not male or female. You can have people who have both body parts, okay? And there's an example of that, right? For 5-alpha reductase deficiency, okay? People think that who are not educated on the subject think that your sex is determined by your X and Y chromosomes. And that's not necessarily true. There's a lot more to it than just your X and Y chromosomes, right? There's actual genes and actual proteins that they need to be made to make, your sex organs, right? So in 5-alpha reductase deficiency, these people have X and Y chromosomes, so male chromosome, but outwardly, most of them look female, okay? So that's a genetic thing, that's still genes, but it's not your X and Y chromosome. And it's not a dualistic thing. It's not like you're either male or either female. It's not so perfect the way these people pretend. Okay, and the interesting thing here is that they're raised female because outwardly they look female, but as they grow into their adolescence, half of them choose to be male. Okay, so that's interesting, right? So it's pretty clear now that it's not a choice, right? It's something innate, right? Thanks to this evidence that we have here. Right? They have X and Y chromosomes. They look outwardly female, and half of them choose to be male, half of them choose to be female. Okay, that tells you right there how you look. Okay, what your organs look like, what your DNA necessarily is. Okay, and how you're raised. Whether you're raised wearing a skirt or you're raised wearing jeans, whether you're raised with long hair, short hair, has nothing to do with how you identify your own gender identity, right? Because they're making their choices differently, right? So I'm not saying these are all transgender people have 5-alpha reductase deficiency, right? But the point is that there's clearly a difference between how you're born and how you identify your own gender. And that same applies to transgender people as well. Now, that's the one point. The other is that conservatives seem to think that common sense and facts are on their side. And as I proved, it's not just 5-alpha reductase. By the way, there's androgen sensitivity. There's a bunch of other disorders in which sex is very fluid, gender is very fluid, okay, among other things, okay? But because of this, the medical community supports transgender rights. It supports their right to identify as the gender that they feel they are on the inside. Okay, so that's the American Medical Association, the largest group of doctors in the country, the American Psychiatric Association, okay, study psychiatry, okay, they came up with this as well. Okay, they support transgender rights as well. So you're the one who's confused. If you're against transgender rights, you are the one who's confused about the facts. Okay, the science is very clearly on the side of the transgender community. Okay. Now, some transgender people that I've talked to brought up the fact that in the DSM-5, which is the psychiatric book of psychiatric conditions, they state that transgenderism is a disorder, specifically gender dysphoria. That's how they label it. And they say this, aha, even the doctors think that this is a disease. Okay. Now, the reason that this is a criteria, this is considered a disorder in the DSM-5 is for insurance purposes. Okay, so you're more likely to get your gender change if your insurance think that there's a medical reason for it and not just a cosmetic reason, right? So and you're more likely to get your insurance covered all the costs associated with gender change, right? So that's why they do it. Okay, so if you actually look, I'll post some documents from the American Psychiatric Association saying that that transgender people deserve all the rights and should not have society bias against them in any way, um, and and also for affirmative medical care. Okay, so I'll post all of that. Okay. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the reason for the law. Now we decided that transgender people deserve their rights, right? Hopefully I've convinced people that transgender people deserve their rights. That still doesn't necessarily address the reasoning for the law, as I see some conservatives give. Yeah, a lot of conservatives hate transgender people, but some conservatives I've talked to are like, hey, I have no problem with transgender people, but I don't want straight males using this as an excuse to wear female clothing and going to a girls' bathroom and molesting young girls. Okay, now I can sort of see that argument, and I am really sure that at least some people believe this to be true. However, in my opinion, I don't know how factually correct this is simply a way of turning the conservative side into the side of the victims, right? Instead of the transgender side, right? And this is an argument made to make the conservative side seem legitimate, because you can't just go out there and be like, oh, I hate transgender people. You need some sort of, vague reason for why you're correct, right? Why you're in the morally right side here, okay? And and this is the argument that they came up with, and it's okay, but the problem with this is that it's obviously incomplete, and it also affects a lot of people who don't deserve to be affected, right? So yeah, straight men can go into a woman's bathroom dressed as a woman and molest young girls, but straight men can go into a men's bathroom and molest young boys, right? Let's say you have a single mother, shopping, and her young child needs to go to the bathroom. She has to stand outside and watch men go in to the bathroom. What if he gets molested? This law doesn't address that, right? What if men what if men molest boys and girls outside of the bathroom, right? Uncles, fathers molest children. Does that mean we should have uncles and fathers not have kids in their homes, right? It doesn't make any sense, right? That's what I'm trying to say, right? You're making this huge, you're using a huge hammer to address a very tiny problem, and which doesn't necessarily address it. Okay, first of all, affects a lot of people who should not be affected. Okay, and ignores all the other problems that you should be addressing but are not addressed by this law either, right? So, so it doesn't seem honest to me, right? If you really cared about young girls being molested, you would make laws that apply to young girls outside of bathrooms, right? Why should we only care about young girls when they're heading into bathrooms, right? Why should we protect young girls when they're in school, when they're at home, right? And why are you ignoring young boys, right? So it doesn't make any sense. To me, it is just an excuse to pretend you have a legitimate reason to take away rights from transgender people. Okay. I also heard that this is how we did it historically. Okay, historically we separated boys and girls. I've heard this from conservative people. We separated male and female in bathrooms. Yeah, but obviously that's incorrect, right? Like again, like what are you gonna 100 years ago people didn't 200 years ago people didn't know about 5-alpha reductase deficiency, Okay, how are you going to address that? What bathroom should they go into? You're creating a lot of extra problems for yourself with these sort of silly laws. Okay, people are like, oh, if you have a penis, you should go into this bathroom. If you don't have a penis, you shouldn't go into that bathroom. You should go into the other bathroom. Okay, what if you had penile cancer and you had your penis removed? Should you go to a woman's bathroom? What if you have hirsutism? Okay, you're a woman. That means you have facial hair growing. Does that mean you have to go to a men's bathroom? Okay, so you're creating all sorts of problems that are affecting a lot of people, not just transgender people. It doesn't make any sense, and you're making up rules as you go, right? Another thing I've heard is that it only affects like 0.3% of the population. So why does everyone need to change for 0.3% of the population? Well, that's what our Constitution is about, right? Every individual has rights. I have rights. If every single human being in America voted, okay, against my right to have free speech, I would still have it, according to the Constitution. And that's what our courts are there for, right? So that the majority doesn't rule and take away rights from the minority. Okay, doesn't matter that they're 0.3% of the population. They have rights, just like you do, just like I do. Okay, so that's addressing that. Okay, this is about the Constitution. It's about rights. Okay. Now the other thing is about discomfort, right? Can women feel uncomfortable with people they perceive to be men heading into bathrooms? Yeah, sure. But again, this is not about discomfort. This is about rights. Okay, maybe you feel a little bit uncomfortable with transgender people. I admit, when I was in high school and college and I didn't have any transgender friends, I felt a little bit uncomfortable around them. You know, I grew as a human being. Okay, as I learned more about them. Okay, I became more accepting. Okay, as I learned more about them, and that's why I don't have any anger towards people who are uncomfortable with transgender people. I don't have any anger towards them because I was sort of in that boat for a little while. But it's all about growth. It's all about mental growth, and it's all about humbling yourself, and all about learning about new experience that you haven't had. So, yeah, people can be uncomfortable, but we need to grow out of it as a society. These sort of biases have existed for a long time. We need to grow out of them. And again, another analogy I want to make, and it's not perfect, but I just want to make the idea that discomfort is different from rights. Okay, so whites, when we had segregation, whites felt uncomfortable when blacks were frequenting their establishment. Right? Does that mean we took away rights from the white people by desegregating the situation? Well, maybe. We are now making them racist whites uncomfortable by having black people around them. But again, rights is not just about whether you're comfortable or not. It's about actual rights as a human being that you have, that our society gives us. Okay, so discomfort. I can see where people are coming from with that. Women can be uncomfortable in a particular situation. I'm not a woman, so it's hard for me to understand that. But at the same time, I feel like on one side you have a group of people that are committing suicide at like extremely high rates. We need to protect their rights above my own discomfort or the discomfort of other women. Okay, this is how I feel about this. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks.